This week in the United States, Super Tuesday, round 2, and a lot is on the line in the Democratic presidential race. There are 352 delegates at stake. The big prize is Michigan, which was critical in 2016. Senator Bernie Sanders narrowly won the state in that year's primary when Hillary Clinton was widely expected to win. But in the general election, Donald Trump ultimately flipped the state to his side. How Michigan lands Tuesday could seal Sanders' fate in his quest for the nomination. We will check in with CNN's Abby Phillip in Michigan, but we start with Jessica Dean, who's with the Biden camp in Mississippi.
Former Vice President Joe Biden turning his attention to the next round of Super Tuesday voting. He spent the day in Mississippi, where he's hoping to shore up support here, especially among African-American voters who have continued to show up very strongly for the former vice president.
And if I am a comeback kid, which it ain't there yet, but if I'm a comeback kid, there's only one reason I've come back: the African-American community all around the country. Folks, I think we are in a position for a new awakening here. I think we're at a second inflection point. This election, we can make a choice to take the country back. We can heal what's wrong in this country.
We saw him do very well in southern states last Tuesday. He's certainly hoping to repeat it this coming Tuesday. From here, he's going to head to Michigan. It's the biggest prize of this next round of voting. Bernie Sanders won it narrowly back in 2016. Biden hoping to put Michigan in his win column this go-around. And he's going to have a little help from a former rival. Senator Kamala Harris announcing her endorsement of Biden on Sunday. We learned from a source that she did not want to do anything until Elizabeth Warren exited the race. She didn't want to go against Warren or Senator Amy Klobuchar, but she came to that decision late Saturday night to endorse Biden. We're told she will be getting out the vote with him, rallying with him in Detroit, Michigan on Monday. In Jackson, Mississippi, Jessica Dean, CNN.
It is make or break for Bernie Sanders' campaign here in Michigan. On Tuesday, when Michigan voters go to the polls, they really hold the future of the Sanders campaign in their hands. Now, Sanders is trying to regain momentum that he lost after a disappointing Super Tuesday finish. He's got to prove that he can bring out his voters, that he can appeal to working class voters in the middle of the country in the industrial Midwest, and that he can appeal to African American voters. And to that end, he rolled out a major endorsement from Jesse Jackson, the civil rights icon, who put his support behind Sanders at a rally in Grand Rapids on Sunday. And here is how Jackson framed why he was supporting Sanders.
A lot of talk these days about democratic socialism. What does all that mean? The opposite word is democracy, all for and by the people. Bernie can win, will win, must win. When Bernie wins, health care wins.
Now, that endorsement comes at a time that Sanders is sharpening his attacks against Joe Biden, trying to make the case to voters in the industrial Midwest that Biden was wrong on issues like trade, even arguing that Biden voted the wrong way on issues of abortion rights in this country. But one of the big challenges for Bernie Sanders is going to be, can he improve his standing with African-American voters? They're a big chunk of the Democratic electorate here in Michigan. In Flint over the weekend, Sanders did a roundtable with African-American leaders, and that's a message that they're hoping that the Jackson endorsement can help them with. The question is there enough time between now and Tuesday for Sanders to make that change? Well, he's been making the argument to his supporters that what he needs them to do is get out to the polls and do not count him out yet. He says this election is not over yet. They are still in it to win it. Abby Phillip, CNN, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And with me now to talk more U.S. politics is Peter Mathews from Los Angeles. Peter is a professor of political science at Cypress College in California. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be here, Rosemary.
All right, so just hours away from the next Super Tuesday contest, and after surprising everyone last week with his sweeping wins, the new frontrunner, Joe Biden, got himself another big endorsement, this time from Kamala Harris. Biden does appear to be on a roll here, doesn't he? How's he likely to go Tuesday up against his rival, Bernie Sanders, particularly in Michigan?
Well, the total delegate count is, I think the difference is about 70 delegates more that Biden has than Sanders has. So, you know, there's still about 2,400 delegates have to be allocated then. So it's still early a little bit. Well, the thing is, that's a big day. Tuesday is a very big day. It's a mini Super Tuesday. And Michigan is the key because it's a key industrial state. It's a swing state, and Sanders has to win this. Right now, we don't know exactly how it's going to go, but it looks like Biden might be having the favorite in terms of the polling. But Michigan is very difficult to poll as well. We'll have to wait and see what happens on Tuesday.
Right. And meantime, California's still counting votes, right, from last Tuesday's primary. And while Sanders is expected to win, Biden continues to narrow Sanders' one sizable lead. What does that signal to you?
Well, that shows that it's a very close race all around. And, there's only two people running now. That really narrows it down much better than it did earlier when there were so many people running. And I do believe it's still a long ways to go, and something could happen. But Sanders is in a tough position. He's got to really work hard and get the people out to vote. Young people, for example, and the Muslim Americans and suburban voters he needs to pull over from Joe Biden. Those are key constituents in Michigan and also in Missouri, which is a big state. And Washington State looks like it might go for Sanders anyway. So there's a lot that has to be done on the Sanders camp. But Biden also is not secure yet. He could, Joe Biden is very unpredictable, especially in debates. And the big debate is coming up in about a week, so we'll have to see what happens there, too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, of course. But how did Joe Biden's fortunes suddenly change from being almost down and out to now being the Democratic frontrunner? What changed for him, do you think? What was the main factor?
The main factor was getting the endorsement of Congressman Clyburn in South Carolina, which actually gave him a boost and had a resounding victory in South Carolina based on the African-American vote, which is 60% of the voters. And that really put him into a momentum that he carried into Super Tuesday. I think that was a very key moment in South Carolina, and I think that was what happened. So we'll have to see if that continues, or if there are a lot of other variables involved, because other states coming up are different than South Carolina. They're much more diverse, not just African-American based, and that could make a difference as well for Bernie, because Bernie can bring out, if he can bring out young people, that's been the key problem for Bernie, is in those Super Tuesday states, about 5% less young people voted this time than last time. And that was not good for Bernie's support because he relied so much on the young people to vote. If they come out again, he'll be on track once again.
And, of course, Joe Biden calls himself the gaffe machine. We'll see whether he can control that. A lot of unknowns going forward, but we'll all be watching very closely. Peter Mathews, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.